polymorphous sexuality. So sexual energy gives you the idea that you can love everybody. And if you love everybody, you want to be a communist because you love everybody now, right? Out of this truly polymorphous sexuality arises the desire for that which animates the desired body, the psyche and its various manifestations. There is an unbroken ascent in erotic fulfillment from the corporeal love of one to that of the others. Do you see this? So he's saying when you get hot and bothered, when you get horny for somebody, and it's horny time, and you seek erotic fulfillment through corporeal bodily love of one,
sex.
That leads to the other forms of love. So if you get hot and bothered for somebody, you'll fall in love with them. And if you fall in love with them, that makes you love everything. And all the other types of love, the Greeks identified 5, follow from it. But he lists 3.
That's not what that means.
So there's an unbroken ascent. So these are in an order. They increase in their spiritual significance. And the erotic fulfillment from the corporeal love of one, the eros, the erotic desire for one that turns into physical consummation, to that of the others, the other loves, to the love of beautiful work and play. Epithedumata, there's no way I'm going to say these Greek things right. Just deal with me. And ultimately to the love of beautiful knowledge. Kala mathematica, or mathematica. No, I added a C. Kala mathemata. Sorry, I went straight into mathematica from my old computer math days. So if you get hot and bothered for somebody and you consummate it and you fall in love with them, that leads you to love your life and beautiful work and play within your life. And then that leads to loving beautiful knowledge and truth. See, so it all starts.
You know what? This is just like watching socialism because and maybe this is just a new entertaining road we can go down because I feel I've got the socialists pretty figured out at this point. And part of why I got so obsessed with watching socialism in the first place was because it was so crazy. Do you guys remember those the old heads? Do you guys remember the old days when we first started watching socialism? And it was like we wanted to watch as much socialism as we possibly could because it was just they were saying crazy thing after crazy thing, and we were like, what are they going to say next? Like, what's more crazy than the other crazy things that we've already heard? And then we just kept hearing crazy thing after crazy thing. But eventually, we started to understand the socialists so well, like. It takes a lot to shock us nowadays. It's like new people come to Socialism Saturday and they're having that same kind of initiating experience where they're like, this is crazy. And all of us are just like, yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. But it doesn't surprise us anymore because we've heard it over and over again. I feel like this podcast with James I feel like I felt when I first started watching socialism where I'm like, what crazy thing is he going to say next? Is it going to get worse? This is fucking hilarious. Where has this been? It's like James is like the new socialist.
Starts with horny time. And next thing you know, you love beautiful knowledge. Kala mathemata. And then he goes on. He says, the road to, quote, higher culture leads through the true love of boys. And what he says, the Greek he gives is orthos pederastin. Correct pederasty. Orthos pederastin. There is no ambiguity in what's meant there. The true love of boys. Orthos, like orthotics, I guess. It's to correct, right? Orthogonal. It means right, correct. Orthodox, orthos, correct doctrine, orthodox, right? Orthos, pederastian, correct pederasty.
What the fuck is he talking
about? The road to higher culture leads through the true love of boys. Literally correct pederasty from the Greek. That's what he says the lesson of Symposium, the clearest celebration of the sexual origin and substance of the spiritual relations is. Spiritual, quote, procreation, he says, is just as much the work of Eros as is corporeal procreation. So now we're going to have spiritual procreation as a result of this, right? And the right and true order of the polis, of the city, of the society, of civilization, Eros and civilization. He's telling you, by the way, the key to how to read this entire book as a coded document. Eros and Civilization is built off of this idea.
I want everyone to notice that James has not said the word capitalism once in this entire podcast.
The right and true order of the polis is just as much an erotic one as the right and true order of love. The culture-building power of Eros is non-repressive sublimation. Sexuality is neither deflected from nor blocked in its objective. Rather, in attaining its objective, it transcends it to others, searching for fuller gratification. So that's pretty sick. So that's actually pointing right in the direction of queer theory, and you also see that it ties directly into this idea of these pre-Socratic sex cults. Now, Drag Queen Story Hour, which sells itself directly into our schools and is applauded by...
As a reminder, the goal of Drag Queen Story Hour is to teach kids that gender is a performance with the explicit goal of abolishing the gender binary, which they believe was created by capitalism. If they can teach kids that gender is a performance and that changing your gender is as easy as changing an outfit, that will lead to the eventual abolition of the gender binary, which is what queer really wants, because queer wants to abolish capitalism. And if they abolish the gender binary, they will abolish the nuclear family. And if they convince a certain amount of the population that they are gender queer, gender fluid, gender non-binary. Non-binary literally means no binary. It is always a reference to the gender binary, not this innocent indoctrination binary that James seems to be talking about. That's what Drag Queen Story Hour is about. It's about teaching kids that gender is a performance that you can change as easy as changing your outfit. And isn't it fun to be in the sparkly outfit with all the sparkles and the flounce and all that stuff? It's much more fun to change your gender than it is to stay your normal, boring gender. And therefore, you are gender fluid, which means the gender binary doesn't exist, which means men and women are just a social construct that was created by capitalism to keep men in the workplace in all the positions of power with all the money, where the women stayed in the home doing the unpaid labor of raising the next generation of proletarian workers. The reason they advocate for reproductive justice, which is abortion on demand, is to liberate women from the gender binary where they are forced into the home doing the unpaid labor of raising the children that will become the next group of oppressed workers under capitalism via social reproduction theory, which social reproduction theory states that social systems will reproduce themselves until they are disrupted, which means that the nuclear family is literally the means of reproduction of capitalism. And that is the point of all of this, because queer theory's goal is to abolish capitalism. It is not a reenactment of some ancient Greek orgy-driven sex cult. The goal is to abolish capitalism. That is the only goal. That is the explicit goal. And James doesn't even say capitalism in this entire fucking podcast. I'm going to make a clip of that later.
By Democratic politicians all over the country. They brag about going to these things on their social media. They encourage these things in their districts. Is, in its own words, quote, a preparatory introduction to alternate modes of kinship.
That means abolish the family. Alternate modes of kinship means the alternative to the nuclear family, because they need to abolish the nuclear family in order to abolish capitalism. Because they believe that the nuclear family reproduces capitalism via social reproduction theory, so they have to present an alternative to the nuclear family that is an alternative to biological kinship, which exists in the nuclear family. Because if there are no alternative modes of kinship, another name for this might be family of choice, then they have no other option for the nuclear family. They have to give people some other system to go to. This is why they're doing polyamory. Polyamory means alternate modes of kinship. This is why they have merchandise at Target that says family of choice and then it has a bunch of queer people in the background. It's pushing the idea of abolish the family. And the specific goal of abolishing the family is to abolish capitalism. They call the family the privatized capitalist family, or the Fordist family. We heard it called the Fordist family the other day. Ford being a reference to the Industrial Revolution, which is a reference to capitalism. I don't know why this is so unclear. Leftists talk about this openly in their trainings, and I have hundreds of hours of those trainings documented on this channel, which James has never bothered to watch.
A preparatory introduction that instructs in, quote, living queerly as such.
Living queerly
means... In other words,
means,
Drag Queen Story Hour, which is in our school.
Living queerly means living outside of capitalism.
Schools and predating on our children, and celebrated by Democratic politicians all over the country, is this cult initiation 2022 and 3 style.
Oh my
Actually,
fucking
2015
God.
to present style. That's when it started.
No!
Drag Queen Story Hour is this initiation process into this erotic structure of the polis that Marcuse is talking about. It's just taking on what Marcuse called in the essay on liberation in 1969, the clownish forms that irritate the establishment. It's Eros doing drag. It's Eros being a clown.
Someone's a clown.
And it's profoundly informed by queer pedagogy. Like we said, in fact, it's published as a piece of queer pedagogy, queer educational theory. And that's rooted in queer theory, which I assert is the cult doctrine for which this practice is the initiation pathway, or one initiation pathway.
My God. James is saying that Drag Queen Story Hour is akin to an ancient Greek ritual of initiating people into a Gnostic cult by having sex with young boys. Do you want to know why no one takes conservatives seriously? Because if a normal person goes to a Drag Queen Story Hour, and you might not like Drag Queen Story Hour, and that's fine, and I don't like Drag Queen Story Hour either, but I don't like it for very different reasons. But let's just take your average normie. Your average normie that doesn't know about any of this stuff. And they're like, what is all the hullabaloo over the Drag Queen Story Hour? And they're like, all these people are screaming about how Drag Queen Story Hour is a Gnostic cult that's grooming children and initiating them into sex. What the fuck is going on? And then they're like, I'm going to go and investigate it for myself, because that's actually what responsible people do. That's what responsible people do. If they have a question about something, they go look at the thing themselves. So then this normie person who's like seeing the right talk about all this crazy stuff, and they're not necessarily bought into the idea of kids hearing stories from drag queens, but they're like, they're running a sex cult out of the library. And so then they decide to go and do their own research, and they go to the Drag Queen Story Hour. And do you know what they see at the Drag Queen Story Hour? They see a drag queen that is almost universally actually dressed appropriately. What I mean by that is there's no nudity. I'm not saying like it is a man dressed up as a woman, that's true, but they're not doing anything overtly sexual. They're not showing any body parts they shouldn't be. Like, they're dressed in an outfit that is appropriate. I mean, you can say whether or not drag is appropriate, but there is a difference between an outfit that has nudity and an outfit that doesn't, okay? And they see this person dressed up as a drag queen and all those sparkles and glamour and all that shit. And they see a bunch of kids that are sitting around the person. And that person is reading the kids a story. And that story is usually perfectly fine and doesn't have anything to do with sex at all. And then you've got this normie person going and saying, you know, this is kind of weird. Like, it's a drag queen reading stories to kids, but like, there's no sex cult here. They're not even talking about sex. And then the normie's like, holy shit, conservatives are crazy. Conservatives think this is a sex cult? What the fuck? And then their conservative neighbor comes up and is like, no, you don't understand. It's a Gnostic sex cult. They're having sex with young boys. Do you guys understand why this looks crazy? Do you guys understand why to normal people, and the vast majority of people in the country are normal people. They're not hinged into all of this stuff. They're not on the cutting edge of news. They don't know what's going on. They're just normal people with families that go to work and then they come home and then they flip on mainstream media, or maybe they watch a game or something like that, and then they go to sleep and then they get up the next day to do it all over again, and they don't care about any of this shit. Normal people aren't as in tune with what's going on as we are. And they're seeing conservatives go, no, it's a Gnostic cult. They're trying to sexualize your kids. They're putting them through an ancient Greek initiation ritual into the Gnostic. And then they're seeing the left go, we just want everyone to be nice to each other, and we thought this would be a way for people to be nice to each other. And, you know, it's just a person in a dress reading a story, and there's nothing really bad going on. And, You know, we don't understand what all the fuss is about. Like, they're crazy. They think this is some sort of Gnostic sex cult. Like, this is like, we're not doing anything wrong. You can come and see for yourself. Are these kids being sexualized? They're all sitting on the floor reading a story. That's what's going to happen. That is what is going to happen. And this is why people think the right is insane when it comes to talking about indoctrination in schools. Because they act like fucking lunatics. Yeah. The rant you did would send the average person into glazed eyes thinking, oh my god, this person is insane because it front loads info, but once they saw the backup clips might sway them. But if they see the backup clips that I have, yeah, the ones that I have, then it does sway them. But like, my evidence doesn't talk about any sort of Gnostic fucking sex cult. My evidence says queer theory wants to abolish the gender binary as an attack on the nuclear family, and I have them saying it on video. Which means that James is pushing people away from finding out what is really going on because it is so insane. And it is so unhinged from reality.